Video is starting. Let's get it started. There we go. Alrighty, hello my friends. How is it going, my Lansdale friends and people all across? Lord knows where y'all are from. But anywho'sin, super excited to be here today. We have a very special guest, but before I introduce our special guest, thank y'all for being here, and also happy Pride. So Pride Month, it's been absolutely crazy busy. Y'all know I've seen so many of you out and about with different kinds of events. However, tonight, make sure to check us out. We are going to be at Round Guys tonight for Music Bingo, hosted by yours truly. So anyway, my friends, we start at 7 o'clock. Make sure to come out to Round Guys. It's gonna be a fabulous time. Anywho'sin, so my special guest today is also, a lovely resident of Lansdale too, and happens to be quite a name and an equal reputation. Hello, tongue twister. I'm gonna avoid that word, lordy. But anyway, he is somebody that you all should know and you will love by the end of this little interview. So please help me welcome our mayor, Garry Herbert.
Hi everybody, it's wonderful to be with you. Thank you for having me today. Very excited to be here and share a little bit about what I do and how we can help the town grow.
Awesome. So before we get started, why don't you go ahead and tell not only myself but also our viewers a little bit about you, your upbringing, your family.
So as mentioned, I'm the mayor of Lansdale. My family and I live in the Pembroke section of Lansdale, and I've been mayor for now 7 years, unbelievably. I've been living in Lansdale for 9 years. So my wife and her family actually grew up in the area, and so eventually my wife turned to me and was like, I want to live closer to my family, and so we ended up moving back to Lansdale. Ironically, we actually got married in Lansdale well before all of that, before I became mayor, before we decided to even live here. We were married at one of the catering locations in Lansdale. So,
no way.
So we bought our first house here, we got married here, we had our first kids here, so we've done a lot in Lansdale.
Gotcha.
I'm passionate about the community. We've done such great things over the last 7 years. The town has changed dramatically. Unbelievably, Lansdale's about 18,000 people at this point.
Crazy.
3 square miles of 18,000 people. So
absolutely wild. So speaking of Lansdale, tell us a little bit about how you got your start in the position you're in as mayor.
So the way it came about is very simple but complicated at the same time, as all stories are, right? I had a background in politics. I used to work for a state senator in New York, where I grew up, and Donald Trump was running for president. He won. And I very vividly remember my wife turning to me and saying, this is horrible, I'm very frustrated by it, can't you do something? Really just looking for the idea that, let's take some control of feeling out of control, right? And so I was like, well, I do have a background in this, maybe there is something I can do. And so I got connected with the local Democratic Party, and I started talking about, how could I help, how could I just be involved? And they actually turned to me and they said, we need someone to run for mayor. And I said, sure, all right, yeah, I'll do that. And I threw myself whole into it, and I knocked on doors, I talked to residents, and there was an energy from people being like, we do need a change, we do need to approach things a little differently, we would love to support you. I ended up winning that election, beating the 10-year incumbent. So it was not bad for your first time as running, so very happy with that. But it has been such an amazing journey, because when you run for office like that, I don't think anyone intends to think, oh, I will be the mayor of the longest running pandemic ever.
Sure.
And then sure enough, that comes to pass, and it changes your perspective on so many things. And so it has been quite the journey, but I love every minute of it. It's been amazing getting to know the businesses, the residents, the complex issues that come with 18,000 people in a small space. And really, just developing the town into where it is today.
Wow. So clearly you're very passionate, and it sounds like you've done, a lot of work. So in your career as mayor, thus far, does anything particularly stand out? Any interesting, stories or key memories that really stick out to you?
So since it's Pride, I think the story I want to tell, and this is one that will be with me forever. So when it was like the second year I was mayor, I want to say, we had Annie Christ, the local drag queen, decide to do a book reading at our library. And our library has very clear rules that was allowable, that it was right, that it was okay, because what Annie was intending to talk about was not, as the traditional drag queen, but to bring a little bit of a different character to the table called Miss Annie, and talk just about being different, right? And as this was developing, as this was going on, I remember our librarian getting very nervous. He started to get death threats about hosting this event. And I kept sitting there thinking, this is wrong. This is wrong that people are threatening our librarian. This is wrong that people think this shouldn't happen. There's nothing wrong at all with the wanting to share a story about being different. And I penned an article that said, this needs to happen and this is okay. And it couldn't be easier for you if you don't want to be involved, just don't go.
Sure.
And the backlash that I got to making that very simple statement that if you're not interested, just don't be there, was unbelievable. Poor Annie and I spent the next 2 weeks receiving all kinds of hate mail, all kinds of death threats, all kinds of messages of hate and bigotry. And I show up that day at the library and I was so happy. So many people showed up. So many people came forward and said, we support this, we see you, we understand the value of this. And they came out and they supported our library. They supported Manna on Main Street by bringing food items to support the food insecure in our community. And they ended up, Annie ended up doing 2 separate readings that day. And it was so heartwarming to see the community come together in that way. But I also will never forget that day for a very different reason. And a protester was standing there with a sign that said, Mayor Herbert will burn in hell. And I knew I made it then. I knew I made it as a mayor when someone is putting your name on a sign that says you're going to burn in hell. And I actually took a picture with that person.
There you go.
And I hold that picture as, you have to be brave, you have to do things, you have to do the right thing.
Sure. No
matter how hard it is. And it was simple for me because my mom was a librarian. And I was talking to her about it, and I was like, this is what the library's about. It's about learning. It's about embracing, the opportunity to learn something new and about both yourself and others. And she was like, you have to tell that story. And so that I did, and I stand by that. And it was a wonderful moment to see the community. From that moment on, I really believe the community came out and said, we're here for our LGBTQ community. We are here to make sure that the right things are done in our community, and we're going to see it through. And I'm so proud of that.
Sure. So then, perfect tie-in, I guess my next question for you would be, what does community mean to you? And of course, everyone has their own definition of community. But for you, and maybe your roles or your, your history of, working with the community, what does community mean?
So, like you said, community means a lot of different things to a lot of people. From my perspective as mayor, the community is all the people that make up Lansdale, their very differing views and opinions, recognizing that this is a place for all of them. That all the voices are valid, all the opinions are there to be heard, even if you disagree with them. But this is a place that enriches all of us together. And I've really pushed that message since I've been mayor, that this is a place for everyone, that Lansdale is a place for everyone, and that we will lift up the voices as they need to be lifted. And so we've really been focused on that. That's why we created things like the Human Relations Commission in Lansdale, which is an organization that hears challenges around bigotry and hate between both residents and organizations. So let's say, perhaps you had an issue with a business and you don't have the money to litigate that. Well, you could go before the Human Relations Commission and see it out. And that deals with everything from LGBTQ issues to racial issues as well. And they're trained professionals in hearing those cases out and helping both parties come together and find the truth and the error if there is one. So, those are the types of things that help lift Lansdale to be a better place to live, work, and play.
Cool. So you were saying about that that organization that you can meet and possibly speak grievances or get support. Where can people find those resources? So
all of those resources can be found on the borough website, lansdale.org. There's a whole section of the website dedicated to the Human Relations Commission. You can submit, let's say something happened, you can submit through the website, write your story, tell what happened. The commission will get a hold of you and say, hey, can we meet? Here's maybe some preliminary information for you to understand how this might go. Sure. And they would help you see the process out. And I don't think everyone knows that litigating something, even if it's small, can be extremely expensive. This is an opportunity to solve those problems for our community without a price tag.
Awesome.
And that is so critical because we need to have those hard conversations. We do need to solve those problems, and we need to make sure that everyone has access.
Awesome, thank you. So let's go into a little bit of legislation and kind of about your roles, your responsibilities. So I read an article about you, and in the article it was quoted that you believe in leaving the world a little better than we found it and creating a community that our children could continue to improve upon. Why is that important to you, and how does this drive you in the actions that you take daily?
Sure. So when I mentioned when I started running for office, my wife and I had that very critical conversation, and part of that conversation was we wanted to have kids. And so, I fervently believe that everyone's job here is to leave the world a little better than they found it. And that's because if we're going to have a better tomorrow, then we need to help build that now so that our kids can pick it up and see us doing it, so that they know it is also their job to continue that process. And that's really a driving feature of everything that I approach in the town. Any piece of legislation that I work on, anything that I pick up and run with, I do it from that place of, will this be better in the long term? Will this leave Lansdale better than I found it? Will my kids look at this and say, this improved my standing or our standing in the world? And if we all do that, I truly believe that we will not just build a better tomorrow, but we will build a better long-term future for everyone.
Sure.
So.
I love that. All the power to you. My only kids will be puppies, so
puppies are great.
You can have the children, that's fine. But I find it also important too. When I read this quote, it stood out to me too. I used to be a teacher.
Okay.
So, but also now being a full-time drag entertainer, I am a leader, and many of us, drag queens are, leaders. So I find it super important to be that beacon of hope, be that beacon of, relatability. And it's going to be very common that we meet people who we don't necessarily agree with day to day, but as long as we're respectful and building a brighter tomorrow, I just think it's so important.
I think one of the things I've learned, not just in public service, but being a father, being a leader to others, is that you really do need to get caught trying.
Yeah.
Because when you get caught trying, others are like, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I be a part of this? And that creates this cascading effect that builds a more inclusive, better society for everyone.
Sure.
So let's get caught trying. Let's do things that are different. Let's lift the voices of everyone together. Like, that is so critical, even if it's small, right?
Sure.
And sometimes the biggest things begin as really small things.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So talk us through a day in your shoes. What changes and actions are you able to make? What is the typical workday for you? Look like for you? Yeah.
So being a local mayor is a lot of things all at one time.
Okay.
Okay. So we have our council meetings twice a month. So those are the very stodgy, formal things that we do. They are several hours long, where we meet as committees. We talk about legislation. We have community groups come in and talk to us about the work that they're doing. Those are the very government-focused things that, of course, we do and take time. I much prefer being out in the community doing things like this, being at the Pride Walk, giving speeches in front of people, and being a part of our Memorial Day parades and all that stuff. I love being a part of the wider community and getting my hands a part of what they're doing. But so much takes place in council, in partnership with council, at the borough offices, of course. So the borough has any number of departments like Public Works, Electric, Public Safety, all of that. I am mostly involved day to day in the police department. So as mayor, I am the head of the police department. And we've been working tirelessly for the last 7 years on improving our policing and the way that we police the community. Chief Mike Trail, who really runs the department, because he's a professional in policing and I'm just, me. He and I have partnered a lot over the years in creating what we call a community policing model, where we are focused on developing a relationship between the public and the police that is unified. That the police aren't there to be a blunt object, but to help you surgically either solve a problem or help make the world and our community better as a whole. And that can be something as small as having our mental health expert out to a call because someone is having a very bad day, or it can be as simple as showing up at someone's house because they lock their keys in their car. And so that community-first approach to policing has been a real focus point for me since that's the department that I'm the head of.
Gotcha. And no, he wasn't referencing me because I would do something stupid like that. Good stuff. So, tell us about some policies that you strongly stand beside, and maybe any initiatives that you have taken or you plan to take for Lansdale.
Yeah. So because I'm head of the police department, that is usually one of my primary areas of focus. So over the last several years, one of the ones that I'm extremely pleased with, very happy with, that was not simple, but it was complicated in a good way, is we pushed forward with body-worn cameras very early. And people are like, oh, that doesn't sound like it's a big thing, but you would be so interested to know the complexities of buying an IT system with body-worn cameras. So the cost of a body-worn camera system to the Borough of Lansdale with our 20-plus officers is upwards of $150,000 a year minimum. And I know that it doesn't sound like a huge chunk of change, but when you're talking about the upgrades that go with it, now you're talking about another $200,000. So it's quite the nut to crack when you're like, oh, we're going to do this. But it was so much the right thing to do because there's a level of transparency that is needed in policing today, and the body-worn camera initiative has been a huge boon for us, and it was just the right thing to do for us to move forward with. And so we put body-worn cameras on everyone. All the police that are in the department loved it. They were on board. There was no pushback against it. And I have this fantastic story that I'll share with you that was one of the first outputs of it. So I get a call from a mother who her son had interaction with the police, and she felt that it had not gone the way she had hoped. Person of color. And I said, why don't you come in and let's talk about it? And because so much of what I do is interfacing with the public.
Sure.
And so she comes in and she tells me the story of how her son and his friends were playing with water pistols, water guns, and someone had called the cops on them. And 3 officers had shown up, and that her son had been, in her words, mistreated by the police. And I said, okay, thank you for sharing with I want to look into this. We immediately open up the body-worn cameras, and we say, okay, let's look at that event in real time.
Sure.
And I saw it from the 3 officers that showed up, and what I saw was a very different event than the one she had described, and the very different event than what her son had kind of portrayed to us.
Sure.
What had happened is the officers showed up, they said, hey, we see you guys with this stuff, can you put it on the ground for us very quickly? We just want to look at it. No frisking, no pushing up against cars, no violence of any kind, just a very well-run event. So I call her back and I say, why don't you come in? I said, I want to show you this. And so we show her the body-worn camera footage. And she's like, oh my God, my son lied to me, right? And she was immediately angry.
Sure.
But the lieutenant turned to her, Lieutenant Devlin, and he goes, don't be mad. He goes, I want you to talk to me about your son's relationship with the police. And she proceeded to tell a story where he had some negative interactions with police in Philadelphia.
Sure.
And he goes, how about this? He goes, how about your son and I get a cup of coffee together? And I'll buy him a donut, we'll hang out, we'll get to know each other.
Gotcha.
And he has been meeting with that individual periodically to get to know him, to help fix his relationship with policing so that the next time he has an interaction, he's not so afraid.
Yeah.
He's not so worried he doesn't lie to his mother about it. And that is the essence of small change that can have lasting impacts, because that young man is going to have a better relationship, not with just officers, but with the way he thinks about policing, the way that policing can improve someone's life. That camera absolutely has changed just one life.
Sure.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, and perception is massive, and specifically, you spoke on it when it comes to people of color, specifically our Black community, but also with the LGBTQ community and history. There is some perceptions and some feelings towards police, but it does sound reassuring to hear that there are many different things that you are doing, and that also the police here in town are doing to make us feel safer, where it's not just, as you said, right, a blunt force.
It's
you know?
it's got to be a relationship that's beneficial for both, and it has to be done in a transparent way. And so I was so happy at that moment that we were able to look at the cameras together,
Yeah.
public and myself and the police, being
Sure.
like, what happened here?
Sure.
And let's really talk about it.
Sure.
And
Yeah, because you never know a person's trauma.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah. So now kind of transitioning to a little bit more, pride affiliated, conversation and dialogue. So in your political career, what have you found to be pressing in LGBTQIA+ rights?
Yeah.
Maybe here in town, maybe, elsewhere, countrywide.
Oh, well, countrywide is a whole thing, right? I would say locally, I'm really proud of the way that our LGBTQ community has been generally accepted and seen and heard and appreciated by the majority of the greater North Penn Lansdale area. The more complicated issues is not at the borough level, but usually in the school district.
Sure.
It is frustrating for me to see some of the language that gets bandied about at school board meetings, not by the board themselves. The board's great. They do a fantastic job of supporting our LGBTQ community. But some of the people that show up at board meetings to express just really distasteful opinions and otherisms and otherizing of people, treating them like they're horrible people for being a part of our community generally. The trans issue that constantly gets brought up at school board meetings is really disappointing. And
Sure.
so I see that that's the flashpoint more so locally, is at the school board level. But as a community at a borough level, we are trying to be as supportive, and we are as supportive as we can be about making sure that everyone knows that we have a vibrant, lively LGBTQ community. I like to tell everyone that Lansdale is a weird place too, and that makes it fun, and that's awesome, and we're going to celebrate that, especially during Pride.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember not too long ago, they raised a pride flag at, was it the district office?
At the district office, yeah.
So North Penn Now made an article, and oh my goodness, the comments were absolutely, and I know I should not have taken a deep dive into the comments, but once you start, you can't stop. But I remembered hearing, certain phrases that I haven't heard in a very long time. But again, then, like, I go in person to, a First Fridays dressed like this, and,
You're getting hugs and,
yeah,
and people
exactly.
love
Oh,
it.
you look fabulous. It's a completely different story than what I like to call the keyboard warriors.
Yeah, I think, and I truly believe this. Now that I've been mayor for 7 years, I've had a lot of those moments, right?
Sure.
Where I write something or I stand firm on an opinion, and suddenly everyone is up in arms, or it feels like everyone's up in arms. But the reality is that most of Lansdale is an accepting, beautiful, wonderful group of people that want our LGBTQ community to be active and involved, right?
Sure.
There is, like every other place on the planet, an active group, a minority group, that feels aggrieved by being uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I'm okay with them being uncomfortable. And I think that it prompts the right conversation for them to be uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
My older brother is gay, and I always ask myself, would my older brother be comfortable with this conversation coming out? And as an ally, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's make it uncomfortable for a few people so that everyone can be seen and heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's very much growth mindset. Through uncomfortability comes change.
Right.
So let's talk about this then too. So how do you or your loved ones celebrate Pride, and what does Pride mean to you?
Yeah, so I think Pride is this fantastic opportunity of self-expression, of being present and telling everyone, I am here and I am still fighting.
Sure.
And I think that is critical, because I'll use an example. Someone recently penned an opposing op-ed about Pride, saying that we've heard you, that's enough, right? And that equality has been reached in their opinion. Nothing says equality's been reached quite like having someone who's not from your communities tell you that equality's been reached. That is a wild statement to hear.
Sure.
That is why Pride has to keep happening.
Sure.
That is why people need to keep marching, because equality hasn't been reached yet.
Sure.
And equity is more important than even equality, and we are still working on that.
Sure.
And Lansdale, as a community, is of course part of that work.
Sure.
And so we want people to come out. It is an opportunity for you to express yourself. It's an opportunity for you to be seen.
Yeah.
And that is so valuable because when people see it, you're empowering someone else to do the same. That person who was maybe afraid to admit that they're gay, maybe afraid to tell others, they now feel empowered to do so.
Sure.
And that is the greatest thing. You're saving lives because so many people in the LGBTQ community have gone through deep depressions, have hid themselves from who they really are, and they need people to show them you can be who you are, and that's wonderful and great. And pride is that opportunity.
Sure. I hear a lot sometimes of people wanting straight month or people wanting, all kinds of crazy things. However, it kind of hit home because I saw like a meme, and it was a very positive one of just words, no like logos or anything. But it said, once your rights aren't, affected by a ballot every year there's an election, then we can have a straight month,
Sure.
So like me specifically, I read a little bit into Project 25.
Oh my. Okay.
And
Bless your
my
soul.
and my fiance and I are planning to get married in 2025.
Wonderful.
However, it's very scary to hear in writing that all government officials will view marriage between a woman and a man. So my marriage then wouldn't be considered to be legitimate, which is concerning.
Sure.
Because I love the same way that anybody else does.
So one of the things I'm really proud of is over the years. So I do marriages.
I love that.
I have
Same.
I have the ability to marry people, and I do probably about 20 marriages a year.
No way.
Yeah.
All right. Very nice.
And I tell everyone I charge nothing for it. I do it because I think everyone should have the ability to get married.
Gotcha.
And it's nothing fancy. My script is very quick.
Sure.
But I love doing them, and I especially love doing them for our LGBTQ community because I want to be a resource that they feel that they have, that they can do this with. And despite whatever Project 2025 wants to try to impose,
Sure.
is that I'm elected by the people. And if I want to perform a wedding, I have that right, and nothing Project 2025 can do will change that.
Sure.
So that's the empowerment of local officials. And under our federalist system, local elected officials actually have some of the highest degree of power when it comes to these types of decisions, because if the public doesn't like it, they can vote me out.
Sure.
Whereas with federal policy, right, they don't have such direct access. So in a court of law, they would see what I've done and they would uphold it. So it's a complicated issue, and only in the fact that Project 2025 is looking to destroy a lot of fantastic things in this nation.
Sure.
We are going to fight it tooth and nail locally to make sure that those rights are safe and secure in our community. I'll give you a great example. Project 2025 aims to pretty much end the ability to have an abortion.
Sure.
Almost wholesale, right?
Sure.
And one of the questions was posed to me as mayor is that they would, in theory, deputize my police force to enforce that. And since the police report to me, I can go ahead and say, no, you won't.
Gotcha.
No, you won't. And I don't care what the federal government has to say about that because they report to me. So those are the types of initiatives when people ask, why do local elections matter?
Sure.
This is why local elections matter.
That's
Because
so important.
if there's going to be a place to stop a line like that, it's here.
Gotcha.
It's local.
That's wild. That's absolutely wild. So I guess we'll kind of wrap up with this. How can you, but also others, make an impact not only this month, but maybe this year and years to come to support not only the LGBTQ community, but also their local communities?
Yeah, I would say the greatest way to support not just our LGBTQ community, but the community as a whole, is one, show up for things. Show up for things, because when you show up, you're really showing that this is something we should keep doing, right? That is critical. Just by showing up, you're making sure that something continues. So if there's an event, if there's the Pride Walk, if there's a flag raising, those things are important to show up for and to be vocal about and to be supportive of. That's the first and low bar that I ask of everyone.
Sure.
The next is to start something. So show up for things and also start something new. Lansdale loves having events. We love having things to gather for. We love being able to lift the voices of others up. If you see something that is not being done, right, but you really want it to be done, please do it.
Sure.
I like to say that I'm one man, I'm one mayor, right? I try to be as many things as I can to as many people as I can. I try to do all the events and be everywhere, but inevitably I will fall short.
Sure.
And I need more people to be mayors of the town. Act like a mayor. Go out there and start something and invest in the community. Lead. So I would say show up for the things you love. Start the next thing that you want to see.
Sure. I love that. You heard it here first. He needs more mayors. So today, Mayor Coutour will be stepping out on the streets. No, I'm only kidding.
Love it.
I think for me specifically, after attending many prides, helping to organize and facilitate a bunch of prides, I think the biggest thing for me that the LGBTQ specifically, but also local communities need, is more wholesome conversation.
Yeah.
So conversations of, asking questions, feeling vulnerable enough to, learn and to maybe educate yourself, or to, talk about things that you might not know but might want to know about.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling a very strong way, express to somebody who's willing to have a conversation why you feel that you do, and be willing to also appreciate the fact of the human is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yes.
So make sure to listen.
Hard conversations are really critical to growth. They just have to happen, right? And I think one of the things I do love about Lansdale is there are times that someone has voiced a negative opinion, and instead of necessarily shooting back with the quip or the cutting remark,
Sure.
there are so many people in Lansdale who are like, well, let's dissect that. Let's actually talk about why you might feel that way.
Sure.
Who hurt you?
Sure.
And that's so important, because that's really where progress is born.
Absolutely. Good stuff. I've had countless, since doing Music Bingo at Round Guys, countless conversations regarding that, and, what people view as, their strong, affiliations and beliefs versus what their perceptions of the LGBTQ community is. It was so far from reality, in my opinion, and now mind you, I'm one of one, but yeah, it just takes those conversations. So speaking of conversation, thank you so much for meeting with me today and having this conversation.
Absolutely.
And to those of you who have been watching, thank you so much. This will be posted on Instagram and my website, so make sure to check it out if you didn't already do so, if you're just tuning in now. But anyway, let's give a huge virtual round of applause to our Mayor Garry.
Thank you for having me. It was
Thank
absolutely
you so
wonderful.
much. And also, thank you, Cardinal Hollow, for hosting a fabulous little place for us to meet. Anyway, come check me out at lovely Round Guys tonight for Music Bingo, and also again at Cardinal Hollow for our Schitt's Creek bingo brunch. So we'll check you out soon. Happy Pride Month. Also, thank you, Garry, so much for being here. We'll see you guys later. Thank you.